Welcome to the show. I am extremely excited to have special guest Carolyn Boldt on the show. Carolyn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yes, I'm excited for this discussion. It's a unique one. I think it's going to be amazing to dive in. So, if you would share with the audience your hidden edge, and then how did you kind of discover it and get into this field?
Okay. So, my focus in this podcast and really purpose in life is to help people understand that there's a psychology of space. And if you can understand it or help or hire people that help you understand it, you can have an edge over your competition. So, we've focused mostly with doctors, with holistic healthcare doctors, got started in chiropractic. Doing that and expanded to just beyond that into other holistic, any kind of brick and mortar. But the goal was to elevate that profession so people saw it as more of a go to and kind of bring them, they're always struggling. How can they bring them to another level? And that's really the purpose of our business that we created, CrossFields that we created. But so you want to know how I got into it?
Yeah, give us the backstory, right? Because it's
Okay, so
interesting, the psychology of space, right? Not many people
psychology.
think about it,
Yes.
think about how it needs to be attractive, clean, all those things. So dive into it a little bit.
So when I was 14, my father worked at NASA and he was in advanced preliminary design, and meaning that he worked on things 20 years in the future. And they were working on the space station. So yes, I'm old. This was a long time ago. And they were working on the space station, and they brought in an architect to help. I think he won the award to do his thesis on a zero gravity Earth orbiting space station, the interior design of a zero gravity Earth orbiting space station, because NASA was aware enough that if they were going to send people up in space in these little bitty spaces, how do they keep them psychologically fit?
Right.
Because they understood that environment was going to impact that space. So he was from out of town, and he would come over, and my mom would cook him a home cooked meal, and they would sit around in the living room and just philosophize about the hidden dimension of space and what space does and the psychology. And he was just sharing all this, and I was just enthralled. So I always loved art, and I always had that artistic nature and things. But I was like, wow, this space impacts people, and you need to be purposeful about it. You need to have a decision to do that. You need to be intentional. So, and you don't realize it until you actually start really paying attention. So my purpose in these podcasts is to get people more aware that your space has a big impact on your success.
And I love the backstory. Thank you so much for sharing here. NASA and the space station. What an amazing story. So obviously that piqued your curiosity, right? You got into the field.
Right.
Explain for somebody, and I would say I'm very novice in my understanding of the psychology of space. So let's dive into what does it look like? How should it look like? What are some common traps or mistakes that people make in designing the place that they work or so forth?
So so I teach classes, and we start with just understanding your environment impacts you.
Okay.
And so I want to take you to a place, let's call it Walmart. And Walmart is very intentionally designed to support their motto, which is the low price leader.
Okay.
So the intention of that space is to no frills, no really expectations of even service. Just you're in there and you're somewhat in a garage sale mode. Okay.
Yeah.
Bright lights, hard surfaces on the floor. Lots of signage, the coloring being very primary colors appeals to more of a lower economic bracket.
Okay.
And so they've created this environment to support what they're doing, and they do it very well, but it's very intentional. So let's go all the way over to a very high-end designer store. And let's just say it's a Louis Vuitton or something, and you walk in, totally opposite atmosphere, very intentionally designed, very few people in there, typically, not crowded at all, lots of great service. Yes, but the lighting, the coloring, typically a neutralized background to really showcase one product at a time, as opposed to Walmart where you're trying to dig through things.
Mm-hmm.
Very intentional. So what both of those, what retail design focuses on, how do you attract buyers that want to buy what you have?
Okay.
And that's what we transfer over into businesses. Now I'm going to go to another place real quick and understand that your favorite restaurant, and you say, hey, you know what? I'd really like to go out and have a romantic dinner. You typically are not thinking a whole lot about the food, although that's important. You're really thinking about that atmosphere.
Right.
Okay. And it's both. Just like or another phenomena with Starbucks. When Starbucks was created, it was kind of going against the trend of like a McDonald's. A McDonald's had a low priced item,
Mm-hmm.
and their interiors before drive up, believe it or not, their interiors were very hard surfaces, very bright colors, and their goals were to get people in and out with high turnover.
Gotcha.
Well, Starbucks was the opposite. They created a environment that people wanted to hang out,
Mm-hmm.
and that created its own following and their own way of growing their business. So that's the intention that we're talking about.
Gotcha. No, and as you paint those pictures and those contrasting styles and looks, it definitely makes sense from, my mind's perspective. What about, so you're working with holistic doctors, that kind of, how do you, I just immediately, when I say doctor's office, I think of a very dry, kind of drab place. Obviously, I'm assuming you take a different approach. Expand on that a little bit.
Well, one of the reasons it's important for holistic doctors to have an attractive space is a lot of them are cash based. So with their choices, their patients are making a choice, as opposed to their patient is super, super sick and has to go to, a cancer doctor or a hospital or something. Although if you look at hospitals, they've even changed dramatically into being more cultural type environment. But the goal is that when we work with our doctors, the very first thing we ask them is, who's your ideal patient? And that space needs to be designed to attract that, ideally an avatar. Like, you really do know who that person is and what their likes are and what they like to listen to, and you design it as if it's their home, so that they feel an environment there, not necessarily their home, but what they would appeal to them. Mm-hmm. And that's just what retail does, is they appeal to that buyer that would buy their products. So you need to appeal to that patient that would render your services, that you'd render services to. So we start there, and it's not about, should I paint the wall blue or not? It's about, what is that person like? Okay. Then what comes out of that is words that, professionalism. I'm thinking of some cozy, comfortable family environment. Some of them have a sports medicine type direction, and they want that energy. So first we find those words. Then we ask them to actually do some homework and actually go search for pictures that represent to them those words. Because if I say energy to you versus someone else, it could be two totally different things.
Right.
So we hear the words, but we also want to see their representation and their interpretation. Then what we do from that is we spend time with them talking about it and looking at where the commonalities are, things that they like, and then understanding their avatar. We put in our own, kind of wrap it all up together to create their schematic design, their design direction. And that involves color, it involves lighting, it involves textures, it involves the height of the ceiling. The higher the ceiling is, the more awesome, the more awestruck people are, the more, and the lower the ceiling, more intimate things are. Just that in itself, just the size of the space. And then there's tricks. If you don't have a really high ceiling, you start with a really low one, and then you walk in and the ceiling beyond that feels a lot higher. So it's like, how do you play with that? There's also I can go on for a while, so you may want to stop me. But there's elements of design that we play with. So the
Okay.
lines, straight lines, like behind you in your bookcases, they're up. Things that are lines up, you want to stand up.
Mhm.
Things that are horizontal make you want to sit down.
Gotcha.
Pictures on the wall a little bit lower make people want to sit down. Pictures on the high a little bit higher. Pictures on the wall a little bit higher make them want to stand up. So there's things of that simplicity. It sounds simple, but it's mixing all of those things together.
Gotcha. From a color perspective, what are the
Yeah.
more inviting colors versus the more kind of repelling colors? I'm always interested, just curious as we
Well,
go
it's
through this
interesting because
discussion.
is any color actually repelling unless you're not the patient that doctor wants, right?
Right.
So color is infinite, and color starts with, and there's color theory. There's just people that do nothing but color work, exactly. But color, generally, in the color wheel itself, there's warm colors and there's cool colors, and the cool
Okay.
colors are calming. The warm colors are more invigorating. So the
Gotcha.
reds and the oranges and things like that create more energy, where the blues and the greens are calming. That's a general, if you think about your color wheel. Then you can go off from there. The brighter, the higher the intensity, the color, the more energy. The lower the intensity, meaning the more dulled out the color, the more neutralized the color, the more calming it is. So those are probably the more simple pieces. But you get into color theory, and green is very healing, blue is very healing, and that's used a lot. But if you're in a sports, say you're a sports physician or a sports doctor, most of them want that energy. They want their doctors to feel similar to what they would feel in a gym to get that
Right.
energy. So they'll bring in more dramatic colors.
Gotcha. Okay. So turning towards like home offices, because a lot of people work virtually, right? So
Yes.
what are some low hanging fruit if people are obviously their space, it has an impact on them, correct? Their environment
Oh,
has an impact on
yes.
them. What are some things that they can do to improve their space
Okay.
and make it more empowering, more inviting, more invigorating for them to be in that space, especially if they used to be in an office and now they're working most of the time virtual?
Exactly. And it's very important because it does play on your psychic
Right.
when you're in your space. So one of the things one of the free resources that I'm offering your listeners is we call it our 5-point designer checklist. And it's
Okay.
the things that we would first do if we were considering how to improve a space. And the first thing that we say is that sometimes you need someone else besides yourself to help you with this, because we get so comfortable in our space and we don't even understand, we don't even know. And most people are not even aware that space is going to impact them. So to bring in another person, we tell our doctors, bring in a potential patient type person that you can trust, that'll be an advocate for you. But in your home office, maybe your spouse would tell you, maybe you're one of your best friends or something, just come in and just look around with you as you go through this checklist. So the first thing is the big overall picture. What is that first impression when you walk in? Is it someplace you want to go sit down? And then if it's not, then you have the problem of what do you do? So the very first, one of the things is it messy? Is it cluttered? Is
Right.
it dirty? Is it disorganized? Things of that sort. Once again, we get comfortable in our own home, especially when we're working virtually or we're working solo. The only thing that matters for us is what's behind us. And hopefully we had that discussion a little bit. What's behind you matters virtually when you're talking to clients and things of that sort. So cleaning up that is important for your business. But as far as your psychic, keeping it clean and organized is a big one. And also then we look, is it dated? Because when it's dated, you don't feel fresh. Things date every 7 to 10 years. So unfortunately, paint and color is one of the first things that date. And just think about your clothes date. They cycle. And yes, there's classics, but there is a dating to those things too. So is it dated? Is it dirty? Is it deteriorated is another word we'll use it. Is it ripped? Is it things that don't work in your environment? Things are broken, things that sucks energy out of you. You know, it's kind of that, oh, God, I got to get to that type of feeling always around you. So that's going to take some energy away from you. And then the other thing we look at is lighting. So in a home office, the very best thing you could possibly do is have sunlight and that natural light coming in. Of course, in any kind of space, because sunlight itself brings so much healing energy and so much energy. But if you don't have the ability to have sunlight, or if you're in a part of the country where there's not a lot of sunlight, doing what you can to supplement more of a holistic light, more of a natural daylight effect can bring a lot of energy. Because really, I think the biggest thing that I've been talking about energy. I think the biggest thing in people's home office is what gives you the energy to go down there and get out of your bed, you know?
Right.
So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love the messy, cluttered, right? That's a battle I face personally because I run multiple businesses, got a lot of pieces of paper, a lot of mail that comes in, and it comes in the office. So that's a constant battle for me. I would also say, you know, getting sunlight so important. I've got some windows here. I love it when it's sunny out. And then is it dated, right? I love how you put a time frame around 7 to 10 years, paint, different things. And I always like to say, hey, what are you also having from a reminder perspective? Those words, I've got words all above my French doors. I've got another poster that has motivational sayings, right? Those things.
Yeah, very much so. How do you inspire yourself? Absolutely. What can you do to give you the energy to go down there and work?
Right. And then you see it and you're like, okay, it kind of snaps you back in sometimes where you can see something that and I think so many times people discount that they're not visually aware that they're seeing them, but their subconscious is picking them up. Their body, their energy is picking those up, and it is either detracting or it's adding to your energy level throughout your day. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree.
So what? All right, sorry, go ahead.
That's something that just being aware of it is crucial. So.
Yep. I love it, and I love having just little reminders around. So decluttering, so important. What like if somebody's hearing this, watching it, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm looking around and they've got papers everywhere. Encourage them to do that. What are the benefits from decluttering, right? How do they feel? I know personally how I feel when I declutter. There's a piece to it. What are some other things that, reasons behind you should declutter, you should keep things clean?
Well, one of the things we didn't go that direction, but when we design spaces, we also follow form follows function.
Okay.
So a lot of what I've been talking about is the form of the space that creates the psychology. But the other thing that's very important to your psychology is, does the space function well for you? Do you have what you need at your fingertips, or do you have them in easy reach? Are things organized so that you can find them? Because every time it doesn't happen, you're wasting time, and time is the most precious thing we have. So making sure your supplies, making sure your equipment, making sure all those things are working and in good order and where they need to be so that you can find them easily, etc. What happens to a lot of people, especially in a home office, is everything ends up on the top of their desk.
Right.
That's so they can find it easier. So how can you organize things so that you can still find it, but it's not sitting there as a stack? Because for me, when I have a stack of stuff over here, it's just a big old reminder of something else I got to get done.
Right.
And you want it. It's just like focus. Just like focus. I know I listened to one of your podcasts that you talked about focus and the do not disturb. It's that same mentality of getting that stuff out of your space. And the more minimalist. I know that I'm not going to say I personally am really very good at it. What is that woman's name that everyone will know her when I say it, and I can't think of her, but she talks about, I know when I moved, I had some friends say, no, listen, go watch this woman, just figure out what you don't need to pack and take with you.
Right.
And it was like, I had a bunch of jewelry from my mother, and it was like, I didn't want to get rid of it, but I went through this process with her where she said, you hold it and you feel like it's like you feel the energy from it. It's kind of interesting. And then if it doesn't belong there, then let go of it and bless it on its way. I don't know if I butchered that. If anyone knows who I'm talking about, Maria Condi, do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't offhand, no.
Okay. Well, anyway, you might want to Google it, minimalist. And, but what she talks about is that stuff takes energy out of you.
Yep.
And it burdens you. And just like we were talking about things that don't work, you have things around you that are broken, or have piles of things that.
No, I'm shaking my head and smiling because I have a, the panoramic views of stadiums. Well, I have one down that I can see, and my sons with friends horsing around down the basement, and they actually broke the glass, but it's sitting there, and it's been sitting there for like 5 months. And after this podcast interview, it is going out of the office because, again, it's like, it feels like it's something I need to do, and it's always sitting there, and that can have an impact on you. So as you were saying, like, things broken, I was looking at it and I'm like, I've got to move that downstairs and just out of the office because I see it every day, and it's impacting my subconscious. Like, I need to go and see how much it costs to replace, and then tell my sons they're covering it. But it just has this impact, and energy is so vitally important to our success. And if things are taking it away, and it can be just as slight as that, but it adds up over time. And it's how you raise your energy is making sure you don't have anything that's taken away from the energy that we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I've loved the discussion. Where can people find you?
So our current website is chiropracticofficedesign.com.
Okay.
And I say that because in April, websites do grow old, I guess is what they say. And so ours was kind of needed some technical working. So we changed it to CrossFieldsDesign.com.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on the show and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Your office looks beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. I will tell my wife you said that because she deserves all the credit. I appreciate it. Okay. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Create a legendary day. Rise, fight, love, repeat. Get after it. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to your Hidden Edge podcast. You are now part of the movement, part of a tribe who's on a mission to uncover their hidden edge. We are stronger together, so please share this. Show up with one person in your network that you want to help. Together, we can empower others and connected